I have now loaded Sentinel in the chart. You won't see this yet. You have to activate the strategy first. To do this, go to the Strategies tab and click on Enable. It is important that you are connected to a data feed. The simulated data feed or playback is sufficient. When I start the whole thing once, it takes a little while. You will see the logo in the background and the progress bar. Then you have the chart trader on the right-hand side, which you can use to make live configurations. To configure Sentinel now, please click on this symbol at the top of the window bar. The configuration menu of Sentinel will now open, and I will discuss this function in this and in the following videos individually. We have separate setting options for short and long, so we can customize our configuration very individually. I will limit myself here in the explanations to the short signals. It is then identical for long signals. We start quite simply with the short signal. I will open this menu once. We can see all the setting options here. There is a tooltip for each option. To do this, I move the mouse over the text and get a small window in which each function is clearly described. So, what is this function for? The whole thing is in German and English. I would now like to go through a small example configuration with you. I'll start with the simple settings at I would like to say that our current bar, i.e. the bar, that is to generate our signal, is called, in this case, for our example, let's take these 3 red bars here that we want to look at. I'll make this a little bigger so that it's clear to us. So I can set the delta here of this entire bar. I can see that down here, the delta, which is interesting for me. I can set the direction, minimum volume minus duration, the max and min wick at the top, the max and min wig at the bottom. I can set the max and min size of the body, and I can also set inside bar modes. Here too we see different configurations. We'll limit ourselves to these upper settings for now and would like to configure something from here so that you can see right away how the whole thing works in practice. A bit larger so that we can see more information here. I would now like to see that there is a short signal, 2021 below this bar. That is our goal. So now I'm going to configure this bar. First of all, I'll say the delta of the bar. The delta I see here below is negative. So I say delta is negative. Direction is clearly bearish. The minimum volume. Now I see here this bar has a volume of 3,360. So I just set the minimum volume to 3001. Then the min duration. Now these are all 5-minute bars here. So this configuration is irrelevant for me because the time unit is the same everywhere. However, this is exciting. If I work with range bars or tick bars, then the duration can certainly be decisive. I can say the max wig top or the min wicks top here. So we are looking at this wig above. I can say that it should have at least a certain number of ticks, or at most a certain number of ticks. In this case, however, I leave out this configuration, i.e. to -1, for below as well, because it is not relevant for me now. I can also say here a max bar size or a min bar size. I'm just going to set this to 20 ticks. Our min bar size. This means that my candle body must have at least 20 ticks. I can use Max Doji Buddy to set that candles with a smaller body than the one entered here are not calculated. If I set this to 10, for example, this bar would not be calculated here because it has a body of less than 10 ticks. Inside bar mode, here I say now that my bar body is not inside previous bar body. So in this case, this body should not be inside the previous one. So we can exclude ranges very well. 2001. This red bar here would therefore fall out because here the body is inside this body. Market memory zones is a special function from the footprint. There will be a separate video on this later. In the next section, I can look at some footprint data, namely from the current bar, i.e. the bar I want to look at, the VPOG, that is the volume POC. In the case of, it is now colored here with a black frame. I'll make it a bit bigger so that we can see it clearly. In this case, this VPOG has a positive delta here. It is highlighted in blue, and we can also see the numbers behind it, 65 to 70th. So I'll start by telling the mode, where should the VPOG be? In my case, I would like it to be in body. If I have set the whole thing here, I have a percentage, 2001 here. If I hover over it with the mouse, I can also see a drawing that describes this. This applies to both the wig and the body, always starting from the open. So here was the open, so these are 0%. Here are 100%. So now with a setting of 100%, I want the POC, the VPOG, to be somewhere within the body. If I set this to 50%, then it must be in the first half. If I set this to minus 50%, then it must be in the second half. And so I can determine relatively well here where the VPOG should be. I can still say the bar type here. So I want to look at the normal candle body or a hiking ashi bar. There is an extra indicator for this, which works with this. I can also say the delta of the VPOCs. In my case, this is positive. So a positive VPOC delta. Hello opposite delta at key level means if this bar touches a key level, there is a separate video later, there is this setting. Key levels down here. Then it may deviate and it should also be negative. That's what this tick is for. I can say that my POC must have a minimum or a minimum volume in percent of the whole bar. I'll leave that here at 50. This means that the POG must have at least 50 contracts. This is fulfilled here. Decreasing volume after POG. Since I want to trade short here, this means that it must have a continuously decreasing volume after the POC. If I set this here. So, I'll read up on what happens here. The volume must decrease after the POC. This means that the volume at each price level after the VPN must be lower than the one before. This must happen by the end of the bar for the condition to be met. This means that every volume that advances here must be lower than this VPAC. This is what this setting is for. I can also set a relation between VP and stacked imbalances. This is also explained here, but I'll leave it out for now. I can also say here, current bar, average previous bar, so I can compare this bar with previous bars for different conditions. I can select a larger bar here, and then I have various setting options here. So, I simply have options here to work with it more. But this is irrelevant for us for now. These are advanced settings, which are suitable for experienced users. So I'll leave this off for now. I can also edit the delta VPOG similar to the VPOC itself, where the maximum delta is, i.e. the same settings, 2001. Since we're not looking at that here, we'll skip the whole thing. I also have here the option for finished auctions and unfinished auctions. So I can say that I want to see either a finished or an unfinished auction at the high or the low. In this case, we now have a finished auction here, and we also have a finished auction. Since we mainly want to trade short, I now say that I would like to see a finished auction for both. So say here finished, and here also finished. This only means that if both are fulfilled, then I get my order and my range filter. This allows me to view several bars beforehand. Can therefore say here that, for example, a certain number of bars must have an opposite direction or the same direction beforehand. Take a look at these modes here. This is interesting for some traders who work with certain patterns. This can be set here. I'll leave that out for now. We have now covered this entire area. Now let's take a look at the example. I'll leave this configuration in here. I now have to tell here in the automation that I only want to trade the order direction short. We'll look at exactly what happens here in detail later. I have also now configured a fixed target and a fixed stop of 10 ticks each here as via my trade management. There is a separate video about what exactly happens here. To start the whole thing now, and also to look at the evaluation, I still have to determine where a signal should be. For this, I have my single position here for short. This means at which point of the bar should my position arise. I have various options here: open, high, load, close, VPOC, untouched, swing, requiner, and external. We'll cover this in a separate video. For now, let's say we want to find our entry point at the low of the bar. Offset ticks so I can still move. This position of the low up and down. By default, 1 tick offset is always set in Sentinel, even if it says 0 here. If it is set to low, this means that I have my position exactly 1 tick below. Valid for bars simply means for how many bars this position remains in the market before it is deleted. If I have configured all this and would like to see an evaluation, I have to set the following. For automation, activate central bot must be active. What? And for engine 2001, which we can find here below, auto trading enabled must also be active, and auto trading mode, either on historical or booth or real time. Real time only shows us the signals that are generated live. Historical shows us only historical data, and booth shows both. Since I would now like to evaluate the whole thing historically here, I go to historian here. When I have done this, nothing happens here yet because I have to exit the strategy once and restart it. So I confirm here with OK and end the strategy once. We now restart the strategy accordingly so that all changes are applied. And we can now see that a signal has arisen wherever we have a purple arrow, i.e. at these points. Then we see a small red triangle. That was our fill, where we came in. Red is our stop position. Green is our target. So we can see accordingly where we got our executions everywhere. And we can now check this historically at all bars that fulfill these conditions. I'll scroll through to see if there were any signals. I can also make them smaller. Then we can see that there weren't that many conditions here that fulfilled this, but really only these bars. Back here again, there was a signal but no fill because we didn't run down again. If we have done this correctly, we can also see our evaluation directly on the right-hand side and see here how our performance would have been with these settings. And on this basis, we can now make further adjustments. We could now adjust things here in our settings video. For example, to have less volume as a condition, or perhaps a different POC delta, and can put together our strategy here as we need it. In the next video, we will take a look at the external signal area. See you soon.